video, audio recordings are being made. This meeting of the Burlington School Committee will be held.
Eric, I'm getting a text that the meeting says it was canceled on the WebEx.
No one's joined, but I'm in the meeting right now, school committee. Tuesday, 11.
We're having some technical difficulties. Just pause for 1 minute, please.
Looks like there's several people dial in.
There's nobody down there.
Yeah, nobody's joined it right now.
Oh, I thought it looked like in the other thing.
No, those are the invites that went out.
Oh.
Sorry.
Again, I'm going to continue while this goes on. Just the Burlington School Committee will be held in person at the location provided, again, at the Superintendent's office. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. People can access
BCAT's joined, sorry, the interruption, BCAT list is going, so. We're getting going, so.
In addition to the WebEx link, people can join from dialing in at 408-418-9388. The meeting number is 2332-286-1248. Again, that's 2332-286-1248 with the meeting password of Tuesday. Next, I'd like to read the equity statement. And again, educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she, they need to develop his, her, their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child or individual. Okay, so this is the first meeting after the election, and it's the only meeting that I chair until a new chair is appointed. So before calling on committee members for nominations, I'd like to thank Catherine Bond for chairing the committee over the last year. Ms. Bond led the committee through the end of the pandemic and into what has been a transitional year. Thank you, Mrs. Bond. I'd also like to express my appreciation for Mr. Carl Foss. Mr. Foss served the Burlington community over the last 3 very difficult years in the pandemic by serving on the school committee. I'm sure he did not run for school committee believing that he would be participating through a pandemic. Communities can't work unless community members volunteer their time for the betterment of others. Thank you, Mr. Foss, for your commitment to all of Burlington's children over the last 3 years. Lastly, I want to welcome and thank Mr. Jeremy Brooks. Mr. Brooks, welcome to the Burlington School Committee. Again, our schools can't function without your willingness to serve. Service is something that you have provided long before your local service here tonight in Burlington, so thank you for your prior service to our country in the Air Force. Thank you.
Thank you for support.
As I am coming to the spring of my 15th year of work in Burlington, I'm proud of the work this committee and the committee's commitment to civil discourse, even in disagreement. The collaboration between this board and the other elected officials across the town is the envy of many of my colleagues across the Commonwealth. Thank you for modeling the behavior that we want our students to emulate. Finally, it's my pleasure, I want to welcome Dr. Lisa Chen in person. We are fortunate to have Dr. Chen in the district for a few days. The impact of her expertise and energy has been immediate. So I'm looking forward to when she begins her full-time work in July. So thank you, Dr. Chen. All right. So with that, Is there a committee member who wants to nominate a chair for the year? Mrs. Monaco.
I'd like to nominate Martha Simon for chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Sorry, I'm going to take some notes. I apologize. Moran, you're all set? All right. Is there any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
I think we have to take a roll call.
Okay. All those in favor? Ms. Massardo?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Bond?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Okay. That's 4-0. It's unanimous. Ms. Simon will be the chair for the next year. As Ms. Simon is out of the country with the board's sort of agreement, may I move on,
Yep.
even though my role is largely ceremonial. Again, is there a committee member who wants to nominate a vice chair for the year?
I will nominate Ms. Masato as vice chair.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Mrs. Monaco, second by Mr. Brooks. Okay, I guess the roll call as well. Ms. Monaco,
Aye.
Ms. Bond,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
and Ms. Massardo.
Aye.
You take on the responsibility. Thank you very much. So that's 4-0 for vice chair. With that, Ms. Massardo, I turn over the meeting to you. Thank you very much. And I think next we have the committee assignments, and I believe in your packet we have those. You're welcome to stay in your chair, move to the center of the table. It's really, again, it's really up to you. So again, thank you.
All right. This on. How would folks like to do the subcommittee assignments? You want me to go through each one? Trying to pull them up.
I'd like to make a motion for the first one, which is the Recreation Commission. I'd like to nominate Mr. Brooks to fill the seat that was formerly occupied by Carl.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All in favor of Mr. Brooks for Recreation Committee?
Aye.
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 4-0-0. 4-0.
That might require a roll call, too. I don't know.
I think,
It's an actual appointment to a
right, I think, right.
All right, sure. Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
I'm an aye. 4-0-0.
Chairman votes aye.
If I remember from last year, we did all the remaining as one vote.
For the ones that were not open. So there are
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that Carl's name was on.
Okay.
So you can group together the ones that his name is not on, so like 2, 3, 4, you could probably do together.
Okay, I see. Do we want, does anyone, all right. 2, 3, 4, 6.
All right, I'll make a motion for the 2 members to serve on the Academic Review Board to remain the same, which is item number 2. Item number 3, for the 2 members to serve on the Sick Leave Bank Committee of the Burlington Educators Association to remain the same as Dr. Conti and Ms. Monaco. And the previous one, it's Ms. Simon and Ms. Massardo. On item number 4, 1 member to serve on the Sick Leave Bank Committee of the Burlington School Administrators Association, Ms. Simon.
Okay. Do you want to go skip skip number 5 and keep going, or?
Number 5, you can't because you can't group that together because
Right,
Carl's on
that's what
that
I'm
one.
saying. So do you want to do 6?
I
while we're
moved
here?
that we
No,
pass the first, that we pass 2, 3, and 4. Is there a
Or we
second?
just go
Second.
one
Okay.
by one.
Okay. Any discussion?
You need a vote.
I'll second it.
Yeah, Jeremy seconded, I thought. Oh, sorry. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I think you have
Aye.
to take a roll call.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
want to
okay.
skip that? Okay.
I don't know. Do you really think on this one we do?
It doesn't matter.
It wouldn't hurt, just
Sure.
run through the
yeah.
roll.
All right, Mrs. Monaco,
Aye.
Mrs. Bond,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
I'm an aye, 4-0. Okay, we have legislative contact person to the MASC.
And I don't know, are you interested in doing that, Mr.?
I'm happy to take that on.
You
Yes.
okay? Okay. So Jeremy's willing if you don't want,
Yeah, that's fine.
and I'll stay in it.
Okay.
All right.
I can make the motion. that-
No, you can't.
No? Okay, you can make.
I move that the legislative contact person for the Mass Association of School Committees, there will be 2, be Mrs. Bond and Mr. Brooks.
And I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Monaco,
Aye.
Mrs. Bond,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
I'm an aye, 4-0.
I move the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee liaisons remain myself and Mrs. Bond.
Do you want to
You
do
wanna
7
group
and
the
8
next
too?
3?
I move the subcommittee to the Select Board remain myself and Mrs. Bond. I move the subcommittee to Ways and Means remain myself and Mrs. Simon. I move the subcommittee to the Board, I can't do
Yeah.
that one. All right, we got to stop with the Ways
So I'll
and
second
Means.
6, 7, and 8.
Okay,
Okay. Any discussion? All right, Mrs. Monaco,
aye.
Mrs. Bond,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
I'm an aye, 4-0.
Do you want, Jeremy, do you want 9 and 10 and
If you don't want
11?
Board of Health,
she
I'm
can't
willing
do
to do
rec.
Board of Health if you don't want it.
Yeah, so I would
Yes, you
recommend
can.
we put someone else
He's
in
already on.
10 because I'm already Recreation Commission, so is it
Well,
the,
Kyle was on it, but
Okay.
Kyle was
Oh.
both.
that's fine. I'm happy to do both.
Okay, so 9, 10, and 11. Do you want all of those?
Happy to do all 3.
I move that the subcommittee to the Board of Health be Mr. Brooks and Ms. Simon. Subcommittee to the Rec Committee be Mrs. Bond and Mr. Voss. Subcommittee,
Brooks.
Mr. Brooks. Subcommittee to Planning Board be Mr. Brooks and Ms. Masato.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Monaco,
Aye.
Mrs. Bond,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
I'm an aye, 4-0.
Subcommittee for Wellness, Ms. Simon, Ms. Monaco, Eric Conti. I move that remains the same.
We
Unless
don't need a
somebody else
subcommittee for
wants it.
transportation
No, that's-
anymore.
What?
There's no
We don't need, there's no
transportation committee anymore.
transportation subcommittee anymore.
All right, I'm still on Wellness. Does anybody want Wellness? I mean,
I'll take wellness if,
You want out?
I don't care. I mean, if you want it, you can have it. All right, so Ms. Simon,
I
Ms.
don't feel like I'm
Masato,
very
and
many.
Dr. Conti. That's the motion.
okay.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All right, Mrs. Monaco,
Aye.
Mrs. Bond,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
I'm an aye, 4-0.
Subcommittee for Transportation is not existent anymore?
Yes.
Correct.
That's correct.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, may I ask why the Subcommittee for Transportation
Because we're
is?
done.
The
We did our
Transportation
project.
Committee was a 1-year committee.
Well, not school buses, but that was different. That was a sort of a subcommittee we put together to work with Bobby on school buses, and it was Kristen and myself, so maybe Melissa and I could do that.
Yeah, we were on the subcommittee that
This
we
was
were
like
That's
the
a different
yeah, yeah.
committee.
transportation, right, so
I'm happy to do.
I'm happy to do
buses,
it
yeah.
again.
I'm just saying, this coming year is going to be a year when we have to go out to bid, and I think there's
So I'm in.
a lot of money to do that, so certainly the committees, you guys can choose what you want, but it may be worthwhile if the two of you have done it to stick with it through the,
Okay.
through the RFP process. Again, but
I'm
it's
all
up
in.
up to the committee, so
Do
I
we need a
don't want
motion to continue the Transportation Committee?
Yep. Well, we don't need to, it's already there. We
Okay.
just need to keep
Okay.
people as they are then.
Okay. So moved. And the Audit Subcommittee, that's me.
Okay.
And the PTO reps,
Carl's on two of them, he's on B and he's on F.
All right, so just do those two.
Jeremy, do you want memorial and,
Hang on. We'll just do the transportation and sub
Oh,
audit
all right.
because
Let's do
those
those
are no
first.
change, right?
all right, so moved.
I'll second it.
And the audit one.
Yep. Okay, second, any discussion? Okay, Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400. Okay, so PTO.
And I'd like to be in the high school.
Okay.
Oh, you want the BHS one?
Yep.
All right. What about,
And you want memorial?
I'm just looking over to make sure. I'm looking over to make sure I wasn't at Pine Glen because the custom is you're not at the school where your
Yeah.
children are, yeah?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
I'm fine taking Memorial. I
Okay.
think
Do you
I
want
can
to
take
stay
high school,
Fox
too, I
Hill
don't care.
and
Yep.
Memorial and BHS?
Yep.
Okay.
okay, so as printed, the PTO reps as printed with Mr. Brooks going into the spot at Memorial and Mrs. Bond going into the spot at Burlington High School. So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All right, Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400.
Thank you.
Burlington Youth and Family Services, Mrs. Simon. Disability Access Commission, Ms. Simon, Ms. Monaco. So moved.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All right, Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400.
Thank you.
And the following formal appointments were also made. School Committee designated the Lab Collaborative, Dr. Conti, so moved.
Do we do these all together?
No.
No.
Second.
Discussion. Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400.
Central Office Sexual Harassment Complaint Management Facilitators Joanne Faust and Christina Ciccolini.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400.
Coordinator for Non-Discrimination Compliance, including Civil Rights and Title IX, Joanne Faust and Christina Ciccolini, so moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400.
School Committee Recording Clerk, Mary Ann Fabry.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All right, Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
I'm an aye, 400. All right. That is all that I have.
Yep.
All right. Approval of the warrants. And someone has them, that's not me, correct?
They've been passed around.
Okay. I just don't have what they are.
I move we pass the warrant as presented.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right, so this is the, both of them? Okay. This, we don't need a roll call, so any discussion on the warrants? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 400. All right, do we have all set with the WebEx? Yep.
Is that working?
So it is working, and we do have members joined. I just noticed that when you click on the link on the right side of the town's page, the link goes to a wrong meeting. So anyone who clicks that meeting is going to get a meeting canceled.
Okay.
If they copy and paste the text that's right on the town's website, that is correct to the meeting. So people are joining it, but clicking on the link brings them to a dead link.
Okay. Do we have any,
Do we need 5? Do I need 4? Okay.
do we have any public participation? Okay. All right. We do not have a student report.
Madam Vice Chair, we
Yeah.
do,
Oh, okay.
actually. Matthew is very punctual and gets me his student reports. He apologizes, he cannot make the meeting today. I think he is attending a volleyball game, and again, I think, I'm not sure exactly what it says, that he finds a volleyball game more exciting than the school committee meeting this evening, but
Go figure, huh?
I'm not sure. So Matthew says, in Burlington High School news, BCAT and Quizmaster Chris Flaherty hosted its annual Factathlon bracket. So today, in the student finals, the Royal Children, comprised of Matt Shannon, Emerson Weisner, and Julia Schwartzman, won. So again, congratulations to Matt and the Royal Children for winning the Factathlon. Also recently, Model UN dominated at 2 conferences, taking home 4 Best Delegate distinctions and 1 Best Delegation, which means that Burlington students excelled. Again, congratulations to our Model UN teams. In student government news, elections are coming up. Students are ready to run and advocate for their fellow classmates. So stay tuned to the school elections that are coming up. And then overall, students are ready for April break. And again, on that note, Matt said he's extremely excited. He's going to Rome with the Burlington High School Latin group. So again, I'm not sure we should extend, he did miss tonight, so there may be,
Steve's going to.
there may be some consequences.
That
Really?
is such a fun
Awesome.
trip.
All right, will you give Matthew just a bit of a hard time for? Oh,
Missing the
okay.
meeting?
You might
Thank
see
you.
him when you get on the, they get on the plane. That's a great
He's a
trip.
good kid, you can't give him a hard time.
Thank you. If they need school committee representation, let us know.
Okay.
Do we have subcommittee reports?
Madam Vice Chair, we do have a subcommittee report. The Ways and Means Education Subcommittee met, but my suggestion is we wait until we have the budget conversation we can
Okay.
incorporate that, unless, Mr. Moran, you want to say something ahead of the budget hearing this evening?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
So you want to do that with Ways and Means also?
Yes.
Okay. So other announcements?
I have just
Sure.
one thing I want to say. So I want to give a shout out to a young man. I only know his first name. His name is Christopher. And he's in the 3rd grade at Pine Glen School. And the other day, my granddaughter fell and fractured her arm in 3 places. And when she was being taken care of, waiting for the ambulance to come to take her to the hospital, there was a little boy, and his name was Christopher, and he was very nice to her, stayed with her, talked to her, and made her feel so much better. And she asked me to mention him at the school committee. So from Eva to Christopher, here's a shout out. He's a nice kid, deserves a Pine Glen hoot.
Thank you. Okay, we're second reading of these good old MASC policies.
Okay, Madam Vice Chair, we may need to table
Oh, okay.
this item, and because, Mr. Brooks, I'm not sure we've had enough time to go through them. You may need more time, and we could have we need a majority, and on a committee, we would need 4 votes. So with Ms. Simon not here, it may make sense for us to table them until our next meeting. It's perfectly fine to do so.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I read through them. I did have many questions, so before I vote on it, I'd like to, have some more discussion about it and some more time to digest.
And maybe you and I can sit down and we can go through any of those questions. Obviously, you can discuss them with the committee as well, but I just think we should table that until the full committee's here.
I just want to know if you have all 3 sections that we did, or do you only have 1 section?
I have all the attachments that were sent to me over the weekend and today. So I have like
Mary Ann
15
would know.
different,
Has he got them all?
yeah.
Okay.
I have 15 different attachments here, so I got 523.
All right, so I'll make a motion to table them till the next meeting because to create a change of policy requires a supermajority, which is 4 votes of the committee.
I'll second it.
May I just point out 2 things in your packet? I know we're not voting on the policies tonight, but the committee asked that Darren review. Darren is the school committee's labor attorney and also our attorney. School committee asked that Darren review, given the recent changes in public participation ruling with the Supreme Court of Massachusetts. He reviewed and made suggestions, so that was in your packet today, and that was only for that one Section B policy was updated based on that ruling. And then we also have, so that had to do with, again, the policy Section A and B. So if you remember, when we did our first reading, someone asked me what would the impact would be on the public participation language, so Darren updated that to align with the recent ruling. So you have that in your packet. Again, we won't vote on it till next meeting, but that's the one policy update that you requested that we provide.
One other thing, it's been requested that we add, the CPAC has requested that we add to, which policy was it? The wellness policy?
The wellness amendment is a second reading, and that's next as well. Do we need to table that, too?
Is that the one that has the not taken away recess?
Yeah, I have that amendment that was suggested.
Okay, no, that, we can do that. It's just, so we'll do it when we get to that?
That's what we're at.
Okay.
So again, in your package, you had the wellness policy. Nicole, would you just remind the committee, again, we had an audit of our food service program by the state, and the state recommended some changes to our wellness language. Is that what this is? And they required us to make this change. So after the first reading, we also got a request for amending the changes that the state recommended, and the amendment was for us to add a bullet point, and there were some suggestions, and again, the suggestion from our neighboring town would be withholding a full recess or physical education class will not be used as a form of punishment or discipline. So again, that was the whole point of having a first reading and a second reading is for people to comment or add amendments. And again, I wasn't really sure of the source, but Mrs. Monaco, you're saying the source for that was the CPAC? So again, my recommendation is to approve the wellness policy suggestions that were made by the state with the amended bullet of what I just read, withholding a full recess or physical education class will not be used as a form of punishment or discipline.
Would you mind taking out the word "full"?
I wouldn't mind taking out the word full, but again, in speaking to teachers who monitor recess, they often have students like take a timeout, like on a hockey game, they get a 1-minute minor for something, so I just want them to be able to manage the students at recess. So they're out at recess. The intent here is not to have students pulled from an entire recess. Is that correct?
I don't know. Could you invite Megan
Oh,
to
sure.
address it?
Yeah. Come on up, Megan.
You walked in at the perfect time.
Don't forget to turn the mic on.
Hi, I'm Megan Novoychuk, representing the Burlington CPAC.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cashman, representing the Burlington CPAC.
Can you possibly fill us in on
The
the last couple comments? since we were-
Question, there was a proposed amendment to the wellness policy about not taking a full recess away, and do you need the full recess language? Do you know?
The amendment, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Madam Vice Chair, can read sort of one of two ways. So it was suggested that again, the language on the wellness policy that the state has recommended, the amended language, a bullet was asked to be added that said withholding a recess or physical education class will not be used as a form of punishment or discipline. That is a bullet from another district that was suggested that we add to this.
Yes.
In my speaking to people who monitor recess, they were concerned that oftentimes they'll have a student sit on a bench for a minute or two as a way of managing the student behavior there. So I was wondering if the intention was not to withhold a full recess from a student or a physical education class, but if the students are out at recess, teachers should have the ability to manage student behaviors when they're out there. And if we're all saying the same thing, and that is a difference without a distinction, and you're comfortable with sort of that management, I can certainly take out the full recess. But I just want to make sure teachers have the ability to manage the students when they're out at recess. This isn't denying a student recess, which I think is what your concern was.
I think that's the big piece, is to make
Yeah.
sure that we don't deny recess, because the kids that need to move the most, like, they need recess, and those are the kids that might have behaviors or reasons to miss recess, and missing recess is just what many students, in fact, all students need, but especially students that, might struggle with being contained in the classroom or having to stay back or feeling punished
Right.
for not having access to be able to move their bodies.
And we definitely want to make
Yeah.
sure that it's not a recess issue, a homework issue, where students have not done their homework, and therefore they are being taken out of recess, brought outside, but having to do their homework at a picnic table in front of other students or anything like that. We want to make sure, so that's kind of where I struggle with that, because if the homework takes them 5 minutes, and that's sort of the
Yeah.
similar issue. So if it's a 1-minute timeout versus a 5 minutes, you got to finish this homework sheet that you didn't finish, it's sort of a gray area, so.
It is, and I think we have to trust our teachers to manage that gray, so, and I do, and I think the intention here is not to pull a full recess from students who need to move as a punishment, or a PE class as punishment, and I think that says it. I'm just in sort of, when I asked around, because I got the request for the language, which I support completely, we shouldn't be using that as a punishment, the concern was, sometimes we ask kids to take a breath on the bench, and then they get up and run again, and they were saying, does that prevent us from doing that? And I said, I don't think so. I think the intention here is that we're withholding sort of a full recess period from students as a punishment. So that's my understanding. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that with the intention.
Yeah, I think that.
That
like a
sounds
minute, I mean,
appropriate.
You do have to manage behaviors, right? So I think a minute makes sense, and a check-in, and then maybe another follow-up if it's getting too much, but the whole period is a no-go for me.
Yeah. I agree.
My concern with the wording is that it says you won't withhold a full recess. Well, will you withhold a half a recess, or maybe a third of a recess, or the first 10 minutes of a recess?
That's-
or the-
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what bothers me, because the reason this came up was because of a child being told to do his homework at a picnic table while everyone else is at recess.
And again, I think we can address that issue without limiting a teacher's ability to manage that time or a bunch of kids out there. So again, I understand the intent. I can take out full.
Can
but-
we add the wording, instead, no academic work to be done during recess time, something to that effect, where we, say, hey, we're not going to do academic work that was for the classroom?
We certainly can, but there are times when we have indoor recess because of weather, and students sometimes have choices, and some students, believe it or not, choose to do some academic work. I honestly think our teachers can be trusted to manage this. I just think that I'll make sure principals understand that recess or PE is not to be taken away as a discipline, and that all kids sort of require to have that activity time, and then teachers can manage it. So I just take it out, but just understand that folks are going to manage it. So it will read, withholding recess or physical education class will not be used as a form of punishment or discipline.
I will move that amendment be added. Was this one already moved last time?
That was a first reading last time, and what I'm asking for is a second reading with this suggestion added to it, as there are 5 numbers. This would be number 6, and we would put that into the wellness policy moving forward.
Okay, that's my motion, that be added.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Do we need a roll call vote for this? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0 there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. School calendar.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. In your packet, you have the 186 draft Burlington School Calendar. The BEA, the Burlington Educators Association, needs to vote on this. Their vote is taking place tomorrow night. Mr. Brooks, just, our teacher's contract is 187 in-person days. What we're looking to do next year is to make one of those in-person days an asynchronous virtual days for the teachers to complete some of the state mandated trainings that they need to do, and also work with the town that has entered into a cybersecurity, sort of has a cybersecurity grant, which requires all employees to be trained to protect the community from a ransomware attack. So we've already sort of asked the school committee, and you approved this proposal. The union will be voting tomorrow night. I think we can get out the calendar as a draft. Again, this is a first reading with your approval. The start date will not change. If, for instance, the union doesn't approve and wants to go back to 187 in-person days, then the only days that will change will be the end of the we'll just have to bump the calendar out. We'll add a professional development day in March and then bump out the last day of school. But most parents this time of year just want to know when school is starting. So again, first day for teachers to report, all teachers would be August 28th. That's a Monday. And the first day for students is Wednesday, August 30th. So then, this is just a first reading.
Go ahead.
I had a couple of questions. So the understanding is that the virtual day is not trend-setting. We're trying it this year, right?
Yes.
Okay. And my other issue with this calendar is I would like when we actually, this is the first reading, so we're going to vote on it next time. I would like two options. I would like one with school on Good Friday and one without school on Good Friday. And I brought this up last year, and I'll bring it up again. Our children have 180 days of school, and on Good Friday, last year, we didn't have enough teachers and we had to close. This year, we had 85 teachers out.
Roughly.
And I had complaints from actually one of my Muslim friends who said, "What is wrong with you? There shouldn't be school on Good Friday. Most of your faculty are Christians, and they want it off." So according to her, the kids are sitting in the cafeteria, they were sitting in the auditorium, and it was a totally wasted day with no learning. And the way I look at that is we might as well have a 179-day school year for kids instead of 180 if we're wasting that day on them. And as it turned out, a lot of kids just called in sick because nobody learns anything on Good Friday because there are no teachers here, or there aren't enough teachers here. So I would like the committee to have the option to vote on a calendar with school on Good Friday and without school on Good Friday.
Madam Vice Chair. Again, Mrs. Monaco, you and I had this conversation last year. When I worked, it's the school committee's responsibility to pick what they think are the most effective 180 days, really between sort of the end of August and June 30th. When I was working in Wisconsin, we had the first day of deer season was a no-school day because we had so few students show up, so local values do matter in that. I think my responsibility is to prevent, as we're a secular organization, I'm going to sort of submit a secular calendar. If the committee would like to discuss and add Good Friday as a non-instructional day, again, that is certainly the committee's prerogative. So I'll prepare the two calendars as part of a second reading, and you all can have that conversation. But again, out of my office, I'm going to present a secular calendar.
Correct.
I would also, I think I sent you and Terry some edits like a month or two ago. Are we still going to have like a student and families calendar and a staff calendar? Just as a parent, I feel like there's too many colors on here.
Again, Ms. O'Meara and I did discuss that.
Okay.
We could certainly prepare that once the
Okay.
dates are here. We did add the, again, a different color
half-day,
for
I
a
like
half-day.
it. Yep.
So we did get your
One step,
feedback,
yep.
and we added that in. So again, for next meeting, we will have, obviously, the teachers would have voted, so we'll know sort of the number of days, and then we'll prepare one school calendar, again, with Good Friday as a school day and one without. And then, Ms. Massardo, once the calendar is voted, we can certainly create a parent-student calendar and an employee calendar. So we can certainly do that.
This is just first reading, we don't need to do
Yep,
anything,
just the first
right?
reading, so you have that. Again, my belief is the start date won't change in either version, with Good Friday or without. Again, it's only the last day of school that will change. So parents are really asking when school is starting. And again, the first day of school that will be sort of suggesting that won't change in any version would be
30th.
Wednesday, August 30th.
Okay, financial update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Thanks. So all of our capital articles and revolving fund accounts are in good standing, and there are no issues with operating or accommodated to highlight tonight, so.
Do we have the revolving accounts report in this pile?
No, it was emailed with the packet. I didn't print them.
Okay. Just one question on the cafeteria.
Yes.
Has the amount in the cafeteria revolving account changed since March 6th?
We have not had any additional receipts come in. The only expenditures that we've seen so far are ones that were from prior. We haven't had our first billing yet from them.
Thank you.
Okay. Fox Hill School Building Committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, I'll turn it over to you, so thanks.
Well, I guess we have a couple big topics to talk about again through the chair, so thank you. Included in the attachments for the agenda and also passed out tonight is a meeting calendar, and it looks like it goes all the way until after the start of the next calendar year. So again, we have multiple meetings. This is the time we were all waiting to get to, and we're here finally. So it looks like the next meeting, SBC meeting, will be Thursday night, starting at 7 o'clock at night. I'm sorry, 6 p.m. I just wanted to make sure.
It's 6, yeah.
6 p.m. So this is going to be a joint meeting where not only will we discuss the normal functions of the SBC meeting, but we also are pairing a community meeting, which we rescheduled from last week as well. So we hope that there's a major attendance for that so we can get community feedback. We'll be announcing more community visioning meetings as well, too. So I'm not sure if there's more discussion, but that's...
Madam Vice Chair, Bob, as a tease for community members as to why they should show up, will the different options for the building project be discussed at this community forum?
This is like the select board, the postponed one.
Okay. So this
So no,
was,
this is the visioning.
this was for invited groups only?
Correct, invited community groups.
The next one is
This
for
is the
invited
visioning.
groups.
Yep.
Yep.
And then it will start to expand more and more in future meetings.
The community meeting is May 18th. We haven't communicated that.
Okay, so we do have an open community meeting on May 18th. And then in your packets, Bob prepared a May calendar with a lot of the school building dates on it. If you haven't seen it, again, I was having a hard time keeping track of all the meetings, so Bob put it together on the May calendar. So Bob, we have a lot to do, and the next big submission back to the state is the what's the acronym? The program.
PDP, I believe.
I'm gonna miss the program document that has to go back to the state.
Right, and that's,
In May.
May 30th.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Okay. VHS update.
Again, Madam Chair, we have a standing item for the Burlington High School update. We have a warrant article coming up for town meeting. We'll get into details about that warrant article again later on in the agenda, but we are asking town meeting to support a full feasibility study of Burlington High School. Again, we're starting that process without state support, but we still need to move forward and feel like the feasibility study is the right way to go. I think after town meeting, we'll have many more concrete conversations about, again, forming a building committee for the high school, which this committee has discussed, and then working with essentially a project manager similar to the project manager at Fox Hill. So we would go through a similar procurement process and bring someone on to help us manage that moving forward. So again, we'll have more details when we talk about our capital warrants coming up.
Okay. Budget.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'd like to invite up Ms. Deborah Clark and Ms. Christina Ciccolini. Ms. Clark is our director of the Burlington Early Childhood Center, and Ms. Ciccolini is our director of special education. Tonight's part of the budget is the accommodated account, and so I want to make sure that I recognize both Ms. Ciccolini and Ms. Clark. They oversee programs for some of our learners who need the most support, and I know their staffs work incredibly hard, so I want to thank them for all the time they put in. Again, Mr. Brooks, there are parts of our budget that are actually in a town account, not in a school account, and the reason that works is because the town trusts us to manage that well, and the people who manage it well are certainly Ms. Ciccolini, Ms. Clark, and Ms. Kasha, so they do a wonderful job doing that, and it helps keep our regular operating budget stable because the needs of students in this particular account can change. And so that's why we're having a separate conversation tonight. We also treat our early childhood center like it's a separate school. So when you ask how many principals we have, I really think that we have 7, Ms. Clark being one of them. And so she has, in your packet today, she has her own Planning for Success document, which is a 3-year, what again, the state calls a school improvement plan. And so this would also be, like the other schools presented to the committee, a first reading of her Planning for Success document, and then a conversation about her programming. If you have any questions about the early childhood program, there's no one better to answer them than Ms. Clark. So, Deb, thank you for being here tonight.
Sure. Is this
Green
on?
light on.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. So I was going to talk a little bit about the Burlington Early Childhood Center, which I know many of you know. We are, we were just talking today as I was getting ready to present, and our current 3-year-olds were the first students who started with the pandemic. They were born the year we shut down, or they were born just as we shut down. So, it's exciting to get back to where we were and having some more opportunities for them to see what learning is like and what school is like. Our staff are working incredibly hard with these students. It's some of them, it's their first time out. It's their first time out of the house. It's their first time with in-person learning. It's their first time learning in a group. So, it's been, as all the other principals have said, challenging few years, and I think we will see some of those effects for the next few years. But again, the staff are working incredibly hard, and it's really nice to see the progress that our students have made. I do want to say last year, we were fortunate enough that you approved a full-time school psychologist for the preschool. And we didn't fill it initially, but we did fill it. And now it's, we want to thank you so much for that. We do have a school psychologist who is doing not only social emotional lessons in each of our classrooms, working with all of our students and providing that support, but it's also helping us with our testing, with our observations of students from early intervention and from outside referrals, as well as lessening the load as Ms. Ciccolini had her school psychologist throughout the district testing or doing observations for us throughout the year, and that was pulling resources from the other schools. So now we have our own, and again, she's helped out in a few other schools, so it really is that collaborative effort. So thank you for approving that. Just in terms of our Planning for Success document, we really, well, when we were looking at it, we really looked at the district initiatives. So for special education, for ELL, for finance, for facilities, we really wanted to try to have that pre-K to 12 lens and tie everything together. If we're doing something at the preschool and it doesn't translate to elementary, we're not preparing our students for that. So if you have the Planning for Success in front of you, I'm not going to go over each objective, but for some of the strategies, and I had to put my glasses on, sorry, we're getting to that point. So for the strategies under the strategic objective for learning, we want to align the preschool curriculum so the students they have learning experiences that are grounded in high expectations. We have a rigorous curriculum, and by rigorous, I don't mean that academic. We're not going to have them reading coming out of preschool. It's that social emotional piece. It's that school readiness piece. It's being part of the group. It's knowing that they're part of the community. It's also knowing that they're not going to get their wants and needs met immediately. It's just being part of that group. We also want to look at our social emotional curriculum. Again, I think that's one of the biggest pieces of early childhood, that and play. Sometimes we just look at those and kind of write them off, but play is a very important part of learning. That's how children learn. And if you look at, right now we have a decorum, we have a certain way that we're all communicating. I'm speaking, you'll ask questions. The kids need to learn that, and that's what they're learning, and that's a big piece. And if they can't do that, the academic pieces are going to be harder for them to access. So we really want to give them those skills to start off with. So again, I know there's a lot of work in the social emotional piece, and in talking to Chrissy Concession, we do want to piggyback on whatever curriculum we're going to be using for that and bring that down to the preschool level. Some programs don't translate down to the preschool, but we are able to look at some things. How can we make that happen for our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds? And then we want to have our professional development around those plans. If we're doing social emotional, if we're doing more with special ed, we want to have our teachers, our staff be part of that rich professional development. And then the next objective for equity, again, it really is important to equitable practices for all learners, and that includes our EL population, that includes our special ed population, our socioeconomic. We have our socioeconomic status, when we did our We Are Burlington and Portrait of a Graduate, we are seeing big differences in that. So we want to make sure that we are reaching all of our populations, making sure that we're valuing cultures. I know all of our teachers at the beginning of the year send a form home. What are your celebrations? What does your family do? What's important to you? And we're able to celebrate that with each classroom throughout the year. And we want to continue that, and how can we support all of those families? And again, supporting the district with the professional development initiatives in cultural diversity and competence and equity. For all of that. And then with our thriving, so we have some really nice consultation with some outside sources. We use NEC, the New England Center for Children. Ms. Ciccolini uses that as well. We have a consultant who comes in and works with our substantially separate classrooms, and she's actually worked with some of our inclusion classrooms, just providing a different level of support, taking a look at the classrooms. What do we need? What are we doing well? How can we support our learners? We're also, we work with Communities United. That's our head start. We want to continue to have those relationships with them. They'll call us with referrals. We'll call them to see if they have full-time programs for some of our children. It's been tricky the past few years. They've had to shut some of their classes down just because of staffing. So it's working with them to see, are there students that we can support? Are there students that they can support? And we'd like to keep that going. And building that bridge now that they had a center in Burlington that was opened. It closed. They're hoping to open up again in the fall. We also want to expand outreach opportunities for families. I think a big part of what we're seeing more so is an increase in our EL population, and how do we outreach? How do we reach out to them? How do we communicate with them? How do we include them more in our day-to-day? Right now, it's 24% of our student population has been classified as English learners. The funny thing is, the state mandates that we screen them and we test them and identify them, but it doesn't mandate any services. So when we get into our budget, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can work around that. And then in terms of facilities, I know Nicole and I are working, and hopefully we'll have an online payment system for our tuition-paying students. Our neighborhood students pay tuition, and right now it's check or money order, but we are trying to work on that online option for them. And also with Bob, Mr. Kuna, we are looking to refurbish our student bathrooms. They're just in need of some repair. They're in need of being up to code. And just for preschool students, we just need some work in there. So that's in one of the warrant articles there. And then I can say this now, but it'll be part of the budget. We are asking for a .5 EL teacher. And again, that person, Ms. Lamprey and her staff have been screening our students, and they've been wonderful resources. They've come down and done some work with us, but having someone with us to do the screening, to go into the classrooms and do some push-in, to work with groups, that would be fantastic for our learners. Also, when we have our students coming from early intervention, it's sometimes difficult to find out, is it a language difference or is it a language disability? And I think just having somebody there to work with the students, to help weed that out, to help give some extra support, doing that tiering. Like, we always want to go to tier 1 first. We don't want to give a student a disability if it's just because they haven't learned enough English on paper for that. So we would like that. And then also that person would help with some of our resources, with the translations, reaching out to families. Some of our families are struggling to get the resources they need or the help they need. So that would be part of that position.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Again, this is a first reading of her school improvement plan, so you'll see it again at your next meeting for a second reading. And you already sort of...
I jumped in.
That's right. That's okay. Your budget request was going to follow, so that's fine. And again, Mrs. Ciccolini, is this just the accommodated piece, Nicole, or is this both? Okay, so this is, Mrs. Ciccolini has a regular ed part of her budget, and then the accommodated part of her budget, and we can sort of make that distinction for the committee. So, Christina, thank you for coming out tonight.
Did you want to continue?
No, I mean, for our budget, I worked with Nicole. We didn't increase our overall operating budget in terms of supplies, contractual services, and all of that. There is, I'm sure you all know, the rising cost of things. What we paid for even 5 years ago is a lot more. Tiffany Jefferson, our secretary, has done an incredible job of, if we see something, she's searching for the best bargain we can get for that. While we were able to level fund in that, I just had to move some money around into different accounts. I did have to take some money from materials and supplies for some contracted services, but we were able to keep our budget the same. Not salaries, but the operating budget, the day-to-day, keep it the same with just some moving around so we can get our consultants in, we can get our materials, and I think we'll be fine with that. Do you need that?
Yeah. So I would actually first like to take the opportunity to thank a few people. I'd like to thank the talented and hardworking general education, special education teachers, speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, instructional assistants, school psychologists, counselors, the director of social and emotional learning, and the team chairs that make sure 604 children receive what they need to access the curriculum, and continue to advocate for them throughout the school year. I'd also like to thank the school committee for their continued support for our special education and district programs. I'd like to thank the Burlington CPAC, which I think they're still here yet, for their continued support and advocacy for children with disabilities. I'd also like to thank Nicole Kasha, who works with me on this budget, which is a daunting task because it is so fluid. We can never fully predict what we can spend on our children's needs just because we never know, one, who's coming into the district, what needs they may need, and what types of supports may need to be added into, whether it be into curriculum, personnel, or even programming. So it can be a challenge. So I appreciate her support with that. So in terms of the operating budget, we've only increased it just a little bit. Again, I can only predict what I think may be happening. This year, we did receive a lot of move-ins. We spoke about that not too long ago, who needed a lot of supplies and specific technology that we did not account for. So this year, we're spending a little bit more. My hope is because those children will be all set, we should be able to still level fund. But we added in a little bit of a cushion, just a little bit for supplies in the operating budget. In terms of the accommodated account, you'll see that some of it actually aligns with my plan for success. We are asking for the Director of Special Education Programs with the increased need of students that are coming into the district and our continuation of making sure that we want to keep our children in the district. It's growing. And so with that being said, I would like to be able to have somebody to not only align curriculum and making sure students are being appropriately placed in specific programs, but also looking at professional development, working with our contracted services. We have great partnerships with McLean's. We have great partnership with NEC, which is the New England Center for Children. We have great partnership with Landmark and making sure that everybody is on the same page in this continuity amongst the schools as they move from elementary, secondary programming. I've asked for another DSC program at Pine Glen. I'm not sure if you know, but the CDC has just reclassified that 1 in 36 children are diagnosed with autism. So we can see that population growing, and we see it currently as the kids are moving from the BECC into Pine Glen. We have a large cohort of kindergartens next year. So we'll be looking to support and educate them in the DSC program. We are looking to expand the middle school DSC program too, again, working with NEC. And so those ticket items are within that budget of the accommodated account. However, we're making sure that we're keeping kids in district, making sure they're part of our community. The nice thing that I'd like to highlight would be that we have a few current seniors that are in our Connections program, and they're receiving their high school diploma. So I think that's important to realize that when they're staying in district, they're not only getting a great education and they're getting the services that they need, but they're graduating with their diploma, so they have opportunities after they leave us. I'd also like to highlight, just in case anybody's bored tomorrow, that our unified basketball team is starting tomorrow. Their first game is Wednesday at 4 o'clock at Burlington High School in the wooden gym. So I think that's it, unless there's any other questions.
Madam Vice Chair, may I just pepper Mrs. Ciccolini with some questions? Currently at Pine Glen, the DSC, the Developmental Skills Classroom, There are 3 classrooms, is that correct?
No, there's 4.
There's 4, and are you talking about adding a 5th or keeping the 4?
I'm adding, I would personally like to add 6, but I would be happy with a 5th.
And again, I think you spoke to me about the enrollment limitations of those classrooms. So people may not understand that we can only have, there's 2 limitations. There's the number of students and then the age range of those students within one classroom.
Correct. So we would like to keep the class sizes small to no more than 12. However, we have seen an increase this year, so we have accommodated that with extra IAs in the classroom. But also, the other regulation is 48 months. So we can't have kindergartners with 5th graders. We can't have 1st graders with 5th graders. So we want to make sure that if we can have, for next year, the designated kindergarten or K1 program, 2, 3, 4, 5 program for that Pine Glen DSC.
Okay, so again, Mr. Moran, there's the rooms, you may see a class size of 10 or 12, but understand that's the limit that we have, and then there's age limitations as well. So I think that's there. And do those same limitations exist at the middle school, for the middle school level as well?
Luckily, the age piece doesn't, just because of the 3 grades. We usually don't tend to go over the 48 months. But yes, it would be, we try to keep that class size, working with New England Center for Children, no more than 6 per classroom.
And then it's not only the teacher in that classroom, but then there's the support staff that also attends to that classroom.
Correct. So we currently have at our DSC at Pine Glen, for example, 22 staff members that are working with those students, and that is not including our BCBA, SLPs, OTs, PTs. Those are all support staffs as well that push in.
And that allows those students then to stay in their local community at a local school.
Correct.
And then the number of students that are aging into the middle school, I think we started with 3 or 4 this year.
Correct.
And then next year, I think there's going to be 7 more students. So that program is going to grow.
Correct.
And then moving forward.
Moving forward, yeah.
So we'll do that. And again, the program person that you're asking to hire, would they have an instructional specialty?
Well, I would prefer them to have the specialty around autism, just because that population is growing. Regardless whether it's a primary or a secondary disability, even some of our children that are in other programs carry that diagnosis as well. So it would be very helpful if that person had a background in autism.
To help with all the alignment that you discussed.
Correct.
So again, other than the additional staffing for program expansion and the program person with the specialty in autism, are you asking for any additional staff as well?
I am not.
Okay. And Nicole, what page of the budget is this for the committee members if they're looking?
So for operating, it's on page 168. And then for accommodated, it starts on the 2nd page of the separate accommodated budget document.
So again, I know we're discussing tonight, but if you look in your budget document, you'll see the special education operating budget is essentially up 1%. So well within our guideline, and the detail is all there. And then again, Nicole, the accommodated increase.
So total school accommodated is up 10.3%, which is approximately 1.3 million.
So that's the total accommodated account, which includes, again, the preschool. Then that includes transportation with the preschool. That includes our lab programs, which is our collaborative programming. That includes our Pine Glen, our DSC program, which is our district program for children with autism, and our middle school program.
And our high schools connections program.
and our high schools connection program, which,
And I think it's important to note that the state raised the rates for out-of-district tuitions to 14%, so that is in there as well.
yeah, when we talk about the accommodated account as well, what Ms. Ciccolini is referring to is for students that are placed out of district, which are also carried in the accommodated account, the state controls the tuition levels of those schools that service those children, and the state has increased, Mr. Moran, we discussed that, the state has increased those tuitions by 14%. We do get some of that back in our program, in a circuit breaker program, but that always runs a year in arrears, so it's going to take us a year to catch up and to get more reimbursement for those tuitions.
Christina, you mentioned 22 staff members
Yes.
in special ed.
Just in the DSC program at Pine Glen.
Okay, but so there are 4 classes now, you're going to 5 at Pine Glen, and there's 22 staff members. What's the state allowed ratio students to?
So technically, it's, you have no more than 8 special education students per special education teacher, and as you increase that number, you add staffing to them.
Instructional assistants?
Correct. But with this program, because of the level of need for these students, the staffing ratio is even higher to make sure that they're able to either participate within the general education curriculum or in other parts like recess, music class with instruments. Some of them do actually participate, taking like violin lessons, et cetera. So we want to make sure we're able to accommodate all of that.
And in a classroom, the 48 months is the youngest, 48 months between the youngest and the oldest in the classroom?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the ratio? Like, do the kids in the program at Pine Glen, do they ever go into the regular classrooms?
Yes, some do. Yes.
Some do, okay. And do you know offhand the ratio of special education students to regular ed students?
Including a DSC child in there? No, I do not know that off the top of my head, but they're
Okay.
off, they are low. That definitely.
It's a low ratio.
Yes, it is a low ratio. It's a
Okay.
small school, so it's a low ratio.
So if I look at the accommodated budget, the 100% increase is a new staff member?
Correct.
And is that system-wide or just certain programs?
So this would be for our specific programs. So it would include the DSC program, it would include our Strides program at Francis Wyman, it would include our DSC and Connections program at the middle school, it would include our Connections program at the high school. Again, it's more of making sure that there is a continuum of services going through as the kids age into the different programs, also making sure that curriculum is up to date and appropriate for each of them, and making sure the partnerships and the collaborations between our like Landmark and NEC and McLean's are working collaboratively with professional development and making sure those meetings are taking place during the school day.
And that's the individual that you hope has some strong background in autism?
Correct, just because that is one of our largest populations and programs. Correct.
And the minus 49%, is that a reduction in a staff member, or what is it?
So when I originally asked last year for the DSC program at the middle school,
Right.
I was concerned that it wouldn't be appropriately staffed, so we were looking at maybe adding a speech and language pathologist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist. With the partnership with NEC and the current staff that I had, I was able to, and I will be able to continue next year, making sure that those specialists can push into those classrooms with the amount of students that are being placed.
Okay, and what's the 112? instructional staff, but
So,
new classroom, new
the new
staff.
right, so
Got
the
it.
new, we're responsible for the instructional assistants. So this year, we started the program at the middle school with 3 students, and now it's up to 5. A couple of them are floaters, I would say, that push in and out of that program. However, there still needs to be instructional assistants that are kind of associated with that. With the addition of the 7 kids that are coming up from Pine Glen, we will need, I can't remove the IAs from Pine Glen and move them
Got it.
into that program, so yes.
Yeah, the programs they're very impressive. I visited them, and they're
Yeah, that's.
they're very nice.
the-
And the kids are so cute.
Yeah, so everybody is working extremely hard, but the staff in all the programs are working really, really hard, making sure the kids get what they need.
Okay. And one last thing, it's for Nicole. Nicole, the 14% increase that the state is adding in, does most of that hit over the cutoff point for the circuit breaker? So if it's 14% and the circuit breaker comes in at, what's it this year?
$49,494.
What percentage?
So we're seeing a 75%.
Are they filling, are they doing it at 75?
That's the hope,
Good.
yes.
Well, they have extra money this year, so in reality, the 14%, 75% of that is being paid for by the state.
Yes, but we get the reimbursement 1 year after.
But we do get it eventually.
Correct.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yep.
Are we dismissed?
Thank you. Yeah, Eric, were they?
Again, I just want to, I want to say, Christina, thank you. I also know that you've been spending a lot of money on reading instruction as well. So if you'd like to maybe summarize that.
Please do.
I think there's a committee member who is interested.
Sure.
I wonder who that might be.
So part of my Planning for Success document was, a small part of it was looking at reading instruction across the curriculum. And so we started with this year training 13 additional special education staff members in Orton-Gillingham. So they're almost completely done with their first year. Next year, they'll be doing their practicum, working with students. Next year, we'll be looking at other programming, including things like Linda Mubel.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And taking a look at the science of reading and how that benefits students. We'll be looking at collaborating with our director of literacy in terms of how do we want Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 in our specialized programming to look like in terms of reading. So we're revamping, relooking at our tiered instruction to make sure that, again, every kid gets what they need.
That's great.
I guess since you brought it up, I just do have one quick question, though. So for outcomes, you said, hey, the majority of the staff has gone through their first year. Is there a way to codify for the success program to say, in year 2, we're going to qualify 30% of our teachers, just so we can kind of a little more accurately measure how successful we're being with the program?
So I'm assuming you're just talking about like the Orton-Gillingham piece of it?
Correct, yeah, just the
okay.
certification piece, yep.
So what we did prior to this is what I surveyed our staff to figure out what they are certified in. And so we have staff that is certified in Linda Mubel. We have staff that is certified in Wilson Reading, Orton-Gillingham, et cetera. So what we found is that we wanted the need for the direct multisensory approach to be done first. So once we have that, I would say, and I'm just guessing out there, but I would say 90% of my special education staff will be certified in Orton-Gillingham alone. And then as we continue to train special education teachers, and also looking at, again, the Tier 3 piece of it, we will be able to figure out how many are certified in that and what type of reading instruction it would be the next step to move forward.
Totally agree, and like I said, it just helps us understand, the movement of pieces and, hey, we've got this many people, teachers certified in this. The next goal is we get 30% certified, and the next year, we continue to certify, so we can show continual progress
Yep.
in the certification process and understand,
Yep.
how we're being more successful.
And because I already have those numbers, just not with me right now, I can get them to you as early as tomorrow.
Sure, and like I said, just in the outcomes, maybe if we can codify that a little more definitively, just so, hey, in year 3, we want to do this, year 2, year, whatever, just so we can just have it, tighten that up a little bit, that's
Yep.
all. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, that concludes all of the cost centers have presented, and so you've sort of gotten through the staff side of the budget presentation. And again, everything that you've heard up until now would be called sort of the superintendent's budget, and you all sort of have asked in the past that you want to see sort of everything, so I think this budget came in, We'll get to that, that's why she's here, so thank you, Nicole. So the sort of everything that, when we asked people to reconstruct their budget every year, Nicole, correct me, came in around 7%? Yes. So again, what you've seen operating at 7%, again, accommodated, you've seen at roughly 10.1. The guideline, Mr. Moore, was 3.75. So, again, Madam Vice Chair, we can certainly open up the public hearing as we have a discussion, Mrs. Monaco, and I'm just looking for what we've done in the past. Again, at some point, the budget's going to transition tonight, hopefully from a superintendent's budget to a school committee budget, and we're going to sort of everything you've heard, we're going to take down to the guideline that we discussed with the town at the beginning of the process. So again, school committee, at some point, this becomes your budget that you need to support again after the public hearing tonight. So I guess what I was asking is we can either open the public hearing and have this conversation within the public hearing, or we can do the public hearing sort of at the end. So it's kind of the prerogative.
Why don't you explain the budget, then we can do the public hearing, then we can close it, and then we can vote.
Okay. I think that's what we've done in the past?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, Nicole, do you have the handouts? Everyone has them. So, I need one. That's the warrant.
Yeah, which one is it?
Which one are we looking at?
I'm going to get it, I'll get it, I'll just,
The cuts.
here we go.
Oh, the cuts.
So, again, if you could, it's the two-sided one that looks like this, if everyone could get that sheet out.
The cuts.
This one?
Again,
Oh, yes.
this one here,
Yes.
it's front and back, I think was at your seat.
Yeah, it's right here too if you want.
Proposed cuts.
That's the one. So again, just going down through the numbers. So what you have just been presented, again, for the last month, has come in at the superintendent's operating budget total, which was the $63,693,000 number. Again, in the budget that we needed to hit at a 3.75 guideline, which is what we discussed with the town and what we've been working with Ways and Means on, is requires roughly a $2 million reduction. Sort of, is everyone following along how the sheet's working? So, we're going to go through the changes in the that we worked through again, and we did have a Ways and Means subcommittee discussing these changes. So the enrollment at the high school next year is going to be down to about 900 students. The formula that we use is program plus enrollment drives staffing. So we believe we can deliver the same program that we always have. The high school is working on scheduling now in terms of section counts. If we have fewer students, we have fewer sections, and then we'll need fewer teachers to teach those sections. Does that mean necessarily teachers will be reduced in force? It all depends. We have retirements, and we may have other needs, for instance, at the middle school level, where we may then reallocate a teaching position from the high school to the middle school from where we're at. So again, the enrollment-driven reduction is based on our current high school enrollment and our projected enrollment for next year. We've had some additional retirements. So again, typically when a teacher retires, they're making a higher salary than a new teacher that we bring in. So we have some additional retirements. So we project a new hire typically at a master's 15, step 3. So that's the salary that we use to make that projection. We currently use what we call elementary tutors or interventionists to provide reading and math interventions. One of the challenges, given the current marketplace, is when we first started our instructional framework, the tiered framework at the elementary level, many of our interventionists or tutors were teachers with master's degrees who were licensed, who were looking to get into the profession. It was a wonderful farm system. We developed folks in our curriculum, and a lot of our elementary teachers who we hired came from being a tutor. Currently, we're having a lot of difficulty filling these positions. We've had 6 or 7 vacant all year. We have no applicants, and the qualifications of those applicants is declining. So the market is changing, and we feel like we need to be responsive to that market. So many of these reductions remain unfilled. So we'll discuss how we're going to think about this differently in the next line. So what we've thought about is if we could replace some of those tutor positions, that tutor salary, with licensed teachers, with specialists. So it's a higher qualified person at a higher salary. So if we could replace that tutor salary with specialists and add a specialist to each elementary school to offset the loss, that we could do that. That's why you see the negative with then the positive built back in. If all of a sudden the situation changes, or if a principal says, I really want tutors instead of a specialist, at this point it's only salary. So I'm just trying to make the salary work. Again, this is a budget. It's not a precise document. It's just the numbers have to work. So what I was trying to say is we're going to eliminate some salary and then make sure we have enough salary added back in for coverage, but it's defined a little bit differently because we can't fill the tutor positions that we've been posting. And then the additional requests, many of them you heard throughout the budget process, is we've eliminated the assistant principal at Fox Hill. There's a middle school bridge instructional assistant, Pine Glen math specialist, again, even though we've added back in a specialist up above. So again, Pine Glen could add a math specialist if that's what they're choosing, but we've taken the one out that they had asked for in their budget presentation. Francis Wyman, Strides teacher, which is a special education teacher. The clerical support that was requested by the middle school. The EL instructional assistant, you guys can read down the list. The instructional coach at the middle school, the additional instructional coach, there's one already. The middle school special education teacher, that might be one of the positions that we move from the high school down to the middle school, so we may fill it, but just in a different way where we don't require a new salary. Again, the math coach, eliminated. The curriculum director at the high school was eliminated. The EL instructional assistant at the high school was eliminated. The clerical support in the music office was eliminated. We feel like we can cover that a different way. There was a maintenance and facilities request for an additional position that we eliminated. A shared social worker with Burlington Youth and Family Services. This is a grant-funded position, so we can get through fiscal '24, we feel, with the grant, but you'll see this request again once the grant is expended. So we will be bringing in a shared social worker in partnership with Burlington Youth and Families, just not funded through our operating budget. A literacy coach, again, is reduced, and then an elementary health teacher across all the elementary schools. So, again, when we first started the budgeting process, you wouldn't see all of these requests. I would just bring a budget to you at guideline, but people, again, commented they want to see what we are eliminating, so you're sort of seeing the sausage being made, as people sort of like to say. Those reductions to the operating budget, again, line up with what we need to reduce. So this brings the changes to the fiscal year '24 operating budget to a 3.75% increase. And again, so that was at guideline. Since that conversation, if you look on the back of the page, and you all participated in this conversation, the high school has a very specific need. I think that Ms. Lamprey, who's with us today, can answer any of the specific questions. I think Mr. Sullivan also mentioned it in working with Ms. Lamprey. We're seeing students at the high school, we're calling them newcomer students, who are coming without a lot of formal education, and we currently have 33 of these students at the high school, and we're seeing, in terms of our data, there's the highest achievement gaps, and they're at the most at risk for dropout at the high school. Many of these students are working full-time after work, and a college preparatory program isn't suiting their needs. So one of the models that we looked at was in Chelsea. They have what's called a school within a school, and they have some flexible programming, and we feel like we can't be successful with these students unless we create a different program for them. I think several of the committee members met some of these students on their high school tour. They're incredibly hardworking, and they add a lot to our community. We just need to create a program for them. So at the bottom of the page, we're requesting to add back in 2 newcomer teachers that would be dedicated for this program. We're developing the program, again, with Ms. Lamprey as we go. We're looking at the Chelsea model as a possible model to follow. So again, Ms. Lamprey, thank you for all your work in doing that. And again, that brings our operating budget from the 3.75% that we agreed to 4%. So I am requesting that you come in slightly over guideline to support this need that we have. And we did meet with the town regarding this increase, and really we discussed, they didn't question the need. What the question was where this expense should fall. Should it fall in accommodated, for instance, or in the operating budget? And they really wanted to see it in the operating budget. So that's why it's in the operating budget. So again, my recommendation for the total operating budget for fiscal '24 is the $61,917,897.04, which again represents a 4% increase over fiscal '23. Nicole, did I say anything wrong? All right. That's excellent. And again, the additional 0.25% over guideline would be for the teachers dedicated to create the newcomer program for the students who are receiving, who need much more than we're able to give them in our current high school program.
Appropriate for comment? Yep, okay. So acknowledging the positions are unfilled for the elementary tutors for that 375, 697, replacing it with specialists, kind of a net reduction of 83,000 change, if I'm doing math right. How does that solve the problem, right? So we have unfilled positions. We're going to reduce capacity and place 4 people in place of 16, if I'm reading this right, 16 out of 24. So how does that increase our capacity or level our needs as we see that 14% jump in services requested?
Through the vice chair, Mr. Brooks, and I don't think I was complete in my summary. In addition to the specialists, we're also maintaining 2 interventionists at each elementary school. So some of the tutors that we're calling are 5 days, some are 4 days, some are part-time. So the again, the total number of tutors may not reflect that. So we are maintaining some tutors, again, 2 per school, and then we're also believing that we can attract and retain for a teacher salary more so than we can a tutor. So again, at this point, it's just salary. Could we keep all the tutors? My belief is we could, but then my concern is then we would have a bunch of unfilled positions moving forward, and then there's a trickle-down effect, and again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds. A lot of our tutors are covering classes, so they were actually using them as substitutes, so they're not actually doing their tutor responsibilities. So we feel like if we can do a better job providing substitute teachers and maybe look at what we're paying our substitutes, we would then free up our tutors to tutor. So even though there's more tutors that are existing now, many of them are being used for coverage, and they're not providing the service that we're actually paying them to do. So it's sort of a multi-pronged problem, but again, the marketplace has changed, so we believe we can attract and retain a teacher with a teacher salary. We can have better luck than what we're trying to do hiring tutors.
Totally agree with the intention. I guess the heart of my question is what contact hours are we losing with students to be able to give them that support, right? Because one person can only physically occupy space at one place at one time. So again, we're removing the number of, or reducing the number of available people to do this work, reducing the number of contact hours. So how are we still providing the same level of service with this, $83,000 reduction?
And again, if people are present in the role, then hopefully they'll be providing those services. Some of our student groups may need to increase a little bit, so we would get, again, a teacher covering more students as opposed to fewer students, which may happen with a tutor piece. And I think we would focus our tutoring on students who really need it. So we may provide less services for borderline students who would get the interventions they need, maybe from their classroom teacher or from a specialist. So again, I don't think we can, to answer your question, frankly, but we may provide the services to students who need them more, and then make those groups a little bit larger. So we wouldn't have the same coverage, obviously, with fewer bodies, but hopefully the outcomes will be the same. Again, and we're trying to make the guideline work.
No, totally agree. Like I said, just trying to codify or with some sort of data model or something that says we're going to reduce this much, but we're still going to be able to service X amount of students based on our projection. So we kind of understand that a little more clearly.
And we have our student growth scores, so obviously we'd make sure we're tracking it pretty carefully next year. And again, ultimately, if we're not seeing the same growth, then we would need to probably go back and shift the model, but then we'd be asking for more resources. So that's the dilemma.
Any other questions? Can you refresh my memory on the athletic trainer? Because it makes me a little disappointed to see that stay and so many instructional folks go.
I can. I'll try to do it well. Is that we have part-time trainers now,
Okay.
and so we're really, again, it's mostly a reallocation, and the school committee, I think, would like trainer coverage at more athletic events. And to Mr. Brooks' point, people can only be at one place at one time across town. So I think we're feeling with full-time trainers, we're getting better coverage than training provided as a stipend to a teacher, because the teachers are obviously occupied during the day and they're only doing afternoon. A full-time trainer can flex her time. She can come in, she can do some treatments in the afternoon, and then have more ability to cover after school and evening events. So I think it's twofold. It's a coverage piece, and again, the school committee's expectation was that we provide training coverage at more athletic events, which is why it stayed in, and it was a health and safety, there was a health and safety reason for doing so.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? All right.
I move we open the public budget hearing.
I'll second it.
This is a roll call, right? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So now you ask if anybody has questions about
Okay.
the budget.
We're now in a public budget hearing. Is there no hands? Anyone on the WebEx would like to make a comment or have any questions?
All Far in the back of the room.
In the room? Yeah. Sure, come on up. We did add a sign-in sheet, to just make sure before everyone goes, if you signed it, just for the minutes.
Hi, Megan Wojcik, representing the Burlington CPAC. I have a question about request number 28, the SW K through 12 literacy coach. Can anyone explain what that position is and why it was cut?
Mr. Wojcik, again, I can. I think there was a request from the instructional office for more literacy support, because that role has expanded to be more district-wide. And we were, I believe what was coming out of the office is someone to do more data crunching, especially at the elementary and middle level. We're starting to do more screening at the middle. We've done screening at the elementary level for a long period of time. And so I think it was just a volume of work position. And then we're looking that we can support that in other ways. So that was where that request was coming from.
And so who is picking up the screenings that are being, who is picking up that work for the
Well,
screenings?
the screenings are being done, and I think we have a new data dashboard company that we're working with, so we're looking to have a lot of that work be automated. And so we were looking to bring in more of an RTI person or coordinator. It may not be a need that it may be a need that we see again, but we are feeling like we can cover the sort of the immediate need moving forward for next year, given some of the changes that we've made. So again, this request came out of the instruction office, and we just can't fit it under guideline. Every one of these positions is important, but we're hoping that we can cover the responsibilities by spreading them out.
Okay. I was curious about the social worker and literacy coach combination, too. I thought that was curious. Or is that, am I reading that wrong? SW?
That's system-wide, I'm sorry.
System-wide, okay. Okay.
So, again, we use a lot of acronyms, I apologize,
Okay.
so.
That
would
makes
be-
more sense.
That would be
I was like,
system-wide.
How can those two be combined? Okay, all right, thank you.
One question. If that's a data crunch position, why is it called a literacy coach? Like, it says literacy coach,
Well,
doesn't say data crunch.
Well, again, we used to have a literacy coach, and she's now the sort of the literacy director for the district, so she is then carrying her responsibilities as a coach before. One of those primary responsibilities of that is doing all the data crunching. So again, we were looking to backfill her current position, and so we just can't fit it in this year. And
Again, I think we maybe.
The title's
changing the
confusing, I think, for
title
what
would've
the
been a good
main
idea.
part of the job is.
You done with the hearing?
Yeah. Bob? All right.
Okay, no questions? I move we close the public budget hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 400.
And where are the three numbers?
I got them.
I got to be able to see them. Okay. Is the committee ready to vote on the budget? Okay. I will say I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't add more of these positions. I personally would have been willing to push a little higher than the 4, but I know I would get outvoted. So I move that the school committee approve the budget for, what's the FY 24 for salaries, $54,005,104.
I'll second it.
Is this a regular vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a regular.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 400.
So we used to call this non-salary. What do you want to call it? Expenses? Call it whatever you want. Okay. I move that we pass the school committee budget, non-salary items for FY '24 in the amount of $7,912,793.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 400.
So total operating budget, if you add the two that we've passed, is $61,917,897, and that doesn't need a separate vote because we've voted them. All right. And then the accommodated account, I move that we approve the school committee budget for the town-held accommodated account for FY '24 in the amount of $14,202,037.
Oh, second it.
A discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You have a budget.
We have a budget. I think the last part of the budget conversation for fiscal '24 is on the capital items. And so I just want to, Bob is going to answer any specific questions, but I'm going to try to explain the framework as best I can. So the
Do you need more votes? We already voted all these.
we already voted all the capital warrant articles, but I as part of the budget process, I just want to make sure I explain what's going on with Bob's help. So there's been some recent changes for the budget for fiscal '24. And so, Mr. Moran, you may, and Ms. Neufeld, you may find this important. So the town identified $2.5 million for us to work with for our capital items. I think in your package, you got a 10-year capital plan that we have. The capital items are typically one time, so would be, as Ms. Clark mentioned, the bathrooms in the preschool would be of something funded from the $2.5 million. So I'm sort of looking at this, the capital conversation with town meeting in three parts. The first part is very typical, where they're really the warrant articles on your sheet 723 to 7-30. That includes the middle school security cameras, the Pine Glen instructional space, the light speed amplification systems. Do you all have this at your
No.
Okay.
So the early childhood bathrooms that we just discussed, the Francis Wyman stairwell resurfacing, Pine Glen siding and soffit, the grease trap at Francis Wyman, the memorial fire system upgrades. So those are sort of very traditional free cash capital projects that we have said. So now that's sort of part one. Part two is there was a group of parents in town, and Bob, you're going to help me out and jump in, who were dissatisfied with the baseball field at Francis Wyman. And so they put forward a proposal their own proposal outside of the school district to upgrade the baseball field. This committee knows that we have a field study that was sort of ongoing, and the timing of that field study also prioritized a baseball field, and it didn't make sense to have a parent-generated warrant for a baseball field and then a school-generated warrant for the baseball field. So Bob and Mr. Hart met with the parent groups representing the baseball field article and Brendan Egan from Park and Rec. And so, Bob, with that setup, I want to sort of turn it over to you as to what was discussed and so how we're proposing to move forward.
Again, thank you through the vice chair. So as Dr. Conti mentioned, I think it was a perfect introduction. Simultaneously, two different groups are working on the same property, realizing that not only from a parent perspective, but from the player perspective as well, too, that the varsity field at Francis Wyman is important and does need some upgrades. So while we were working with the engineers that's also working on the field report, again, that parent group, along with Brendan Egan, were working together with the report. So we did meet we did have a small little laugh that we were working on the same project together. I will say that what they had put forth, even they will admit, may have been more of a Band-Aid. We're looking at a larger scale project, which I think they appreciate because, again, it took the Band-Aid and made it into the improvements that I think that field deserves. So before you tonight, you'll see that there's a request, and it really takes a whole design of the field and changes not only the layout, includes dugouts, which we're missing right now, covered dugouts, batting cages, new fences, new covers for the fences, but also changes the alignment as well, too. Many of you may not know this, but on the right-hand side, we actually hug the property too close to the tree line, so we lose some of the overhang due to trees, but we also lose length in the outfield on the right-hand side. So actually shifting that whole property over, regrading the infield, and then slice seeding and correcting the imperfections in the outfield, along with fixing the irrigation system, again, provides us with a whole new level of field. And again, like I said, not only did the parent group and the rec department agree, but again, myself and Mr. Hart from the athletics department think that, you know, this is a good plan going forward. So again, we just wanted to make sure that we hit the mark with the needs of the residents, but also the needs of the players for that field.
So again, we hope we reached an agreement where we're including the baseball field upgrade in our $2.5 million free cash capital warrant allotment, because the parents and the Park and Rec didn't have a funding source, so we're providing the funding source and we're providing an upgraded project. And it fits into the athletic facilities assessment that we had done. So, if you look on your sheet, then that leaves us with essentially $1.4 million in warrant article expenses. The ones I read off, which were typical, and then $700,000 for the Francis Wyman baseball field improvements. Is everyone following me on that sheet? So we have $1.3 million, and we have a 10-year capital plan. And so there was a lot of conversation about what to do next, and I want to sort of explain the conclusion that we reached. So in looking at our athletic facilities assessment and master plan, again, which is we're going to get to every town meeting member and capital budget person, committee member moving forward, there are projects that cost a lot more than $1.4 million. So it's not that we can't spend the $1.4 million, but what I didn't want to do with Bob's recommendation is spend the $1.4 million doing something in a short-sighted way, because what we're thinking of is we need a more expensive project to cover more work moving forward. So I think everyone understood when we did an athletic facilities master plan that there were going to be costs associated with it. We didn't think it made sense to do a partial project or a project that may need to be revisited in the future. So it was the timing of the report that just didn't get in time to make us do that. So our suggestion, because we have another warrant article for the Burlington High School feasibility study for $1.5 million, where there wasn't a funding source identified in the article, what we were hoping to do is to potentially reallocate a warrant article from last year's town meeting, which was the music room floors, and we feel like we can do that potentially a different way. So that would be $450,000. And if you look at our unspent capital projects, which is the $1.3 million, that we can fund the high school feasibility study with the money that we've had allocated this year, the 2.5, again, plus the $450,000 reallocated from the music project. So again, I'm sorry if that's a little bit confusing, but essentially what we did is we found the funding, Mr. Moran, for the high school feasibility study through free cash by not spending our total 2.5 allotment and by reallocating the $450,000 allotment, again, with town meeting's approval to do that, because the funding source otherwise might have required a 2/3 vote if it was borrowed or something else. But this would be sort of within the spending guidelines that the town would have provided for us anyway.
And all those capital articles, with the exception of the field that we voted on by the school committee.
Okay. So even the feasibility study. But what I'll try to explain to Full Ways and Means with Bob's help and Nicole's help tomorrow night is that we're sort of taking a big chunk of the $2.5 million free cash for capital, and we're dedicating $700,000 of that to a baseball field upgrade, and then the rest of that to the high school feasibility study, which we were actually submitting as a separate article, but now we are sort of including it within our overall capital request for this year. But what I want to say here is that you're going to see a larger request based on the athletic facilities assessment, working with the community, parent groups, and Park and Rec to be funded in fiscal '25. So the needs haven't gone away, but we feel like we can do it in a more comprehensive way and save the town money over a long period of time, but it's going to be more expensive. So again, it's more of the timing of the field study that really precluded us from getting sort of, I think, a wise request into town meeting ahead of that, and we know we need the high school feasibility study, so that's what we prioritized. Bob, do you want to add anything? Because I feel like hopefully I was trying to be clear.
Through the Vice Chair, so I think you did a great job explaining it. The only thing I do want to add is you all should have been provided a copy. This is just a summary report. I think the last time we discussed it publicly, this facilities assessment report was about 530 pages. It's up to 596 pages right now. But again, the first 32 pages in the document is the executive summary, and it lays out each one of the fields, gives them a score, gives them recommendations, high, medium, and low on the cost centers that it could take us to bring those up to better levels. So we did work with the engineers, again, discussing this with resident groups, also with Parks and Rec, to make sure that we are hitting the targets that were presented in the assessment report. And again, the timing was just a little bit too tight for us to really feel comfortable. Not uncomfortable spending money, because we would do that. The thing is making sure that we brought a project that we could either make sure hit the number and we wouldn't be too short with, and we felt that we were going to be too short getting the project that we wanted. So again, this request to pull some of that money back, we think actually is a good play, except, like I said, next year these needs don't go away, and we still will have requests for fields.
So then our suggestion moving forward is almost going to be putting together a community committee that uses the study that we paid for and to look at fields and prioritize that. So when the need comes before Ways and Means and town meeting, they're not just school needs. It'll be a community need, and it'll be based on sort of, Bob, this was looked at like for the next
10 years.
10 years. So again, it's going to be sort of a 10-year plan, and then we feel like we can just do a better job projecting those costs if we just slow down a bit. So again.
Can I get?
Do we have a warrant article already for that? Or do we have to vote one, or is it in, how are we getting that on the warrant?
It was a placeholder with no dollar value, from what I remember.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so all you're going to do is put the dollar value in what's existing?
I think we need you to vote to amend your prior, the prior vote to adjust to include the 700,000, and then withdraw 732 and 733.
Change any other warrant articles?
The withdraw that she just mentioned is 2 to withdraw.
What are we withdrawing?
732 and 733.
Okay, and what was the total for those?
They were
TBDs.
TBD, they were
To be
placeholders.
determined?
All right, so if I look at this, the town allotted us 2.5 million? Wow, that's unusual. Okay. We had requests for 1,371,000. Okay. You've added in the repurpose and the feasibility study, and now, what's the new amount for this? 24. No, for the,
Oh, this is 700, it's here, the baseball field?
okay. So we are actually staying under the 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's assuming town meeting approves reallocation of the 450, yes? Okay.
That's the big caveat.
All right, so what motions do you want made to fix this?
Again, I think at your place, we have the capital request form, which is a town form for the baseball field. All that we had before, you voted on a placeholder, so now we can fine tune that warrant. So Nicole, what would you want the warrant to be is,
Do we have the wording of it?
There's no language for these. They're literally going to be printed in the article just as they're listed here. So it would just be motion to approve the Francis Wyman baseball
Okay,
field
motion
improvement
to approve
article
the
for
Francis
700,000.
Baseball
Field
field
improvements.
improvements for 700,000.
I'll second it.
You have a question?
Oh,
Sorry, I can turn my mic on. Hey, Bob, so I've noticed in the plan, it says fix irrigation. Does that include addressing drainage in the outfield, soccer field area, which was kind of the impetus of this project?
Again, through the vice chair, the intent is yes. With the shift of the baseball position, it's going to move the center field out. Also, there's a regrade of the infield and repairs and slice seating to the outfield.
Good.
Yep.
Steve?
Steve Martin from the Ways and Means Subcommittee. Question, what is the expected maintenance cost and how is that going to be allocated in future years?
to the baseball?
For the baseball field, yeah.
So currently, we already have an agreement with the rec department where they maintain the fields. They turn on the irrigation system, they cut the grass, they slice seed the grass and do seeding. We also provide to the school budget funding for weed products and germination products at the beginning of the season. So this would maintain that.
Okay, so thank you. Thanks.
All those in favor? Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
400.
Nicole, would you like them to then withdraw? So could we have, again, a motion to withdraw then 7-32, which is the middle school athletic field improvements?
Can we do one motion for two, or we have to do separate motions?
Let's just do separate, just in case. So
Okay, what's the number?
7-32, the middle school athletic field improvements.
Okay, I move we withdraw the warrant article 7-32 for Marshall Simon's athletic field improvements.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Move we
4-0.
withdraw warrant article 7-33 for BHS athletic field improvements.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 400.
And again, Nicole, we did speak to town council, so the warrant for the BHS feasibility study is, there's going to be language that's provided to the moderator.
Yeah, so currently they're submitted as two separate articles, and it went to print like this, but I think you said that at the request of the moderator to combine them into one article. So town council is going to work on language to combine the two of them.
And the reason we were suggest that we combine them into one is we didn't want the one to pass and one to fail. So I think if we explain it to everyone, it makes sense, but I think if we explain it all at once, we'll have a better chance of it passing. And again, I just want to reiterate that by delaying some of the athletic field projects for a year, we are coming in under the amount allotted, Mr. Moran, for capital projects. So again, but please don't think we're not going to then come back next year with more time requesting to provide funding for some of the projects that are in the field study.
We're not getting $450,000 worth of time.
Okay, so
Steve's fertilizing the money tree every day, right?
so that's what we're doing.
Who the rec department request?
Bob?
Can I comment a little bit off topic? You just brought up the word
Yes.
fertilizing. Some recent conversations have asked that maybe at a future meeting, we bring that conversation of fertilizer back up for discussion. When I say back up, the question is whether or not the current products that we're using could be brought into conversation again, or if there's potential new products that we could look at. And again, some people think that there are better products or the product that we have is good enough. I don't want to argue that. I just want to know if at some point the committee is willing to discuss that.
Sure.
Yes.
Is that it?
Any other motions?
Anything else?
Just want to double check, Nicole, do we need any other votes tonight? We will post a school committee meeting prior to town meeting. We do that every year just in case, so we'll have a sort of a meeting placeholder. We may need to meet and adjourn or cancel the meeting depending if we need anything prior to town meeting. Mr. Moran, we are, again, I just want to make sure I thank the subcommittee for all their time. You guys put in a tremendous amount of time going through all the line items. Is there a subcommittee meeting prior to the Ways and Means at 7?
Yes.
So
6 o'clock. They don't need
There will be a subcommittee meeting with the school subcommittee, or school committee subcommittee for Ways and Means. Our subcommittee hasn't taken the votes yet on any of the local education budgets for the town schools. And so we'll probably have a few trailing questions, and then we'll vote on the operating budget and also the accommodated budget plus the capital warrant articles.
Do you need us there? You want us there?
I would like that, yeah.
yeah, again, I'll be there too, so it's fine.
Yep.
At the town hall?
Yeah, it'll be main conference room. We'll only have an hour for it, so we'll have to go quick, because the main one will start at 7. And then it'll probably start with the presentation of the Shawshene budget, and then followed by the Burlington budget.
You're doing the rookie superintendent first, huh?
Yes. It's a bad
That's up
habit.
to the chair, that's not up to me. But
That's okay. Mr. McIntosh he's good man, so that's good.
thank you.
Bob, you trying to?
Yes, I was going to ask that next. Again, I was going to ask you the status of this with capital budget.
Thank you, through the vice chair. So I met with capital budget last week. I think we had a great conversation, which we always do. They do seem to quiz me and push me a little bit to make sure that my answers are correct. And like I said, great conversation. I do want to reply to you all that every one of the projects presented, they did support and they voted in favor of. The one thing they did not vote on at all is the field article, because we have not presented that to them as well. So I will be sharing that with them as of tonight. And but like I said, the other articles they did support.
And
Awesome.
did you discuss the feasibility, the high school feasibility with them?
Correct.
And they approved that as well?
I was told through email that all articles discussed were supported by the group except for the Francis Wyman Field article.
And again, Madam Vice Chair, may I ask another question? And Bob, last year at town meeting, they wanted to see the town meeting forms utilized for capital projects. And
That's
so
right.
all of the forms that town meeting is receiving is on the forms that they're expecting?
Correct, and Ms. Caution made sure that this year that happened, so.
I don't think the one from tonight made it out in the town meeting packets, but we can get it out separately to the town clerk to make sure it's distributed to town meeting members.
So I know that was important to the committee, so we're following the same format
It's
as
this, right?
town?
Yes.
Yes.
It's helpful, I think.
So, so again, Madam Vice Chair, again, with that,
And Ways and Means, thanks you for filling those out. I know that's been a constant issue for the past couple of years, so we appreciate that. And for the early access to the warrant update.
so again, I just want to thank Dr. Chen for being here tonight. Again, in the future, you're going to be talking much more than I am, so I think that's wonderful. So again, thank you again for attending.
And Ms. Monica.
I just wanted to thank you also, Dr. Chen, for spending your vacation here with us. We appreciate it.
We brought the warm weather for you.
I want to thank everyone that I've had the opportunity to meet. It's just such a joy to be here, and I'm learning so much, and I...
Just wait.
Oh, no, it's been wonderful, and every opportunity I've had to learn, I think it's just only going to position me better to, when I start on July 1st. So thank you, Dr. Conti, for extending the offer to allow me to be here and listen in on your meetings. Thank you.
Lucky guy.
Any other business? No?
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.